Essentially, there is a sort of coordinated hacking campaign by Chinese spies to try and gain access to some of our key national infrastructure and some of our politicians' profiles. Now, listeners may think, well, that doesn't really affect me, but actually, it is worth bearing in mind that you do need to be wary.
This afternoon. In the meantime, time for a look at our tech rundown, as we do every week with Jane and Fee. We're trying to make sense of some of the tech world, really. Wrap our head around some of these things, from AI chatbots to the latest on Elon Musk. Helping us with that this afternoon, tech journalist Chris Stokel-Walker. Chris, hello, good afternoon.
Hi, afternoon, Daryl.
Data center power use, I believe, is to surge sixfold in 10 years. Let's go right back to the beginning on this story. What is a data center?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that do?
Yeah, a data center essentially is something that we will all interact with every single day. So whether you are accessing the internet or whether you're using an AI tool or you're playing a game that is connected in some way to the internet, it will go through a data center. They're essentially these massive warehouses that are often put in the outskirts of towns and cities, huge places that are basically racks upon racks of computer servers. And so when you type into your web browser times.radio or something like that, it will ping that server. It will send a request to that server. That server will kind of process it in that data center, and it will then send you the website that you're looking for. So these things are really integral to all parts of our technology, all parts of our lives, and increasingly with the rise of AI, they're going to become ever more important.
Yeah, and I mean, tech obviously playing a massive role in our life, but incredibly powerful tech playing a massive role in so many areas of our life. Like cryptocurrency, we had this conversation around cryptocurrencies, didn't we? And the amount of energy and power that cryptocurrency, digging for, mining for cryptocurrencies takes.
We did, and that is one of the sort of I guess first warning signs of this, and the first sort of a time that this came into the public's attention. Every time that
Yeah.
someone tried to mine a Bitcoin or something like that, it would use up energy. In this instance, the National Grid chief executive John Pettigrew, he's come out this week and essentially said, we are looking, thanks to the AI revolution, at a heck of a lot more data center use in the coming years. And to look at that, we can kind of see, for instance, the story of Ireland, which is a very, very tech forward country where they've seen huge upticks in power use. So basically, National Grid is here saying, we need to be aware that the more that we use things like artificial intelligence, every time you ask ChatGPT a question, you need to be aware that you are going to use up energy, you're going to use up data, and ultimately you need to be conscious of that and worry a little bit about the environment.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? It's a very different dimension, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about TikTok. Why are some TikTok influencers, Chris, being threatened with prison?
Because they're giving dodgy financial advice, Daryl, basically. And this is a story that we've discussed previously with Jane and Fee before, of essentially unregulated influencers who think that they manage to find a way to get rich quick. And obviously, we're in trying economic times and lots of people spend their lives on social networks. And so the two kind of come together in a pretty terrible car crash of bad financial advice that is unregulated. So here we have essentially the sort of financial authorities in the UK, the FCA that many of us might have heard of, regulates banks and mortgage lenders and things like that, saying, look, if you are a TikToker or any sort of influencer who is going to be giving advice on how to get rich quick, you need to disclose that you are not a financial professional, because ultimately too many people are taking your advice. Something like 4 in 5 millennials and Gen Zers, people your and my age, who listen to these people, think that they're going to make millions and then ultimately lose it all.
Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? And those people are so powerful as well, by the way, right? I mean, they have people eating out the palm of their hand.
They do, and that's kind of the scary thing about it is, there's a shift in power and control and trust that we're seeing with the rise of social media. Before TikTok, before Instagram, before Facebook and other apps like it used to be that there was, a newsreader or a person of authority, someone in a smart suit and a tie that would give you advice. It would often be quite boring. But nowadays, we're more likely to trust those that we see on social media, and in part because of the way that they communicate as well. So they kind of become trusted friends, but they don't really have the backing.
By the way, those old ways of being communicated to like that are so heavily regulated. I mean, I couldn't do it. There are so many things that you can do on TikTok that I cannot say right now on the radio, that I cannot do right now on the radio, because there is a regulator who would stop me, rightly would stop me from doing that sort of thing. And yet, of course, there is a very powerful Wild West out there as well, isn't there? Just finally, Chris, just briefly, if you will, we need to talk about China, I think, don't we? Declared a country, declared a threat to national security this week. And China's spies are coming for our social media passwords, according to the government.
Indeed, the National Cybersecurity Centre and the government came out earlier this week. You'll have seen it, listeners and readers, in the Sunday Times this weekend, just gone. Essentially, there is a sort of coordinated hacking campaign by Chinese spies to try and gain access to some of our key national infrastructure and some of our politicians' profiles. Now, listeners may think, well, that doesn't really affect me, but actually, it is worth bearing in mind that you do need to be wary. And so, there'll be a story in tomorrow's Times too that I've written, where I've spoken to experts about what extent you should listen to the advice that the sort of National Cybersecurity Centre put out earlier this week. Basically, this is because you might well have been at risk if you were registered to vote in Great Britain between 2014 and 2021. Or 2022, sorry. Unfortunately, your data has been accessed by the Chinese government. They now know your name and your address, and with that, because we have so much information tied to our digital accounts, they can learn a lot about us. So, good digital hygiene is really important
But
here.
but help me understand another element of that story, Chris, which is that stuff is publicly available anyway. If I wanted to, I can go and have a look at the electoral roll, I think, in the library.
It is, but the idea is that they've accessed essentially slightly more detailed information. So there is the public-facing version of the electoral roll, and then there is the private one. And the concern here, I think, is China is trying many different ways to kind of sneak in and learn more about us. The government were particularly concerned about the electoral register hack because it's possibly going to be used to try and identify dissidents or things like that. So, worth bearing in mind 6 degrees of separation here. If you went to school with someone who works for a national security contractor, or, I don't know, an aviation company or something like that, they may well have industrial secrets that China wants, and they may well try and access those people who have those secrets through your Facebook account. So,
Gosh,
just be wary.
my goodness me. So hang on. So what do I need to do? Do I need to do something? Do I need to change my passwords?
So it's not necessarily about changing your passwords, but it's about just kind of keeping a watchful eye over this. So if, for instance, you see some unusual activity on your account, then make sure not to accept strange friend requests. Likewise, if you've got multiple passwords, sorry, multiple accounts and only a single password, that's probably not a good
Oh,
idea.
it's so
So
hard though, Chris. How can I need a password for everything? I need a password to leave the house these days, Chris. It's so hard to remember so many different passwords.
it is. So the National Cybersecurity Centre advises that you come up with a simple password that's maybe three separate words that aren't connected to you. Remember, of course, they've got your address, so